The series is set in the year 2149, when the Earth's capacity to help life is coming to its end, as oxygen is draining day by day because of overdevelopment. Individuals are experiencing issues breathing, so they are compelled to wear specific covers. Additionally, the world has become so contaminated that the plants can never again develop and organic products are thought of interesting. To monitor things rigorously, a military-like policing has been forced. They have taken on a two-youngster strategy to battle the overpopulation issue. Then again, the researchers have too accomplished a leap forward. They have found a tear in the texture of room-time, which leads them to Land Nova, the ancient Earth of 85 quite a while back. As such, the researchers have figured out an opportunity gateway that can magically transport them to the Cretaceous time frame, where the world is still green and dinosaurs are as yet dynamic. Toward the beginning of the series, Jim Shannon, a cop by calling, enters his home wearing a rebreather, which is a breathing device to help wind current. Jim lives with his better half Elizabeth, a clinical official, and three youngsters Josh, Maddie, and Zoe. Along these lines, notwithstanding being a cop himself, he has disregarded the two-kid strategy. Before long, he takes out an orange from his pack and the whole family is extremely astounded since natural products, what's more, vegetables are hard to come by. As the family is living it up with the orange, Maddie out of nowhere enters the condo and cautions them that she saw the populous control police in the entryway. This cautions the guardians and they rapidly conceal little Zoe in an air vent. Soon after, the police come in and begin scavenging through the spot. It shows up as though somebody informed them about the third youngster. They search all over, yet neglect to view as the little young lady. In any case, similarly as they are going to leave, a frightened Zoe cries from the vent and gets found. Crushed, Jim asks the police to discharge his girl and even beginnings battling them. Be that as it may, he is effortlessly dwarfed and arrested. For his offense, he is given north of an 8-year sentence. After 2 years, Elizabeth warns a jail watch lastly figures out how to visit her significant other. Jim is debilitated in his cell, because of unfortunate air quality and need of a rebreather. As the two accommodate, Elizabeth uncovers that she has been given a situation as a clinical official in the 10th journey. Be that as it may, she isn't permitted to take Zoe. The 10th journey is the 10th gathering of human pioneers who will be permitted to make a trip to Land Nova, where they can begin another life. Prior to leaving, she lets Jim know that he is their last expectation and sneaks in a rebreather. Inevitably, Jim checks the rebreather and finds a secret laser blade inside. In the following scene, Elizabeth, Maddie, and Josh registration, go through security, and head towards the time entrance. Then again, Jim makes do to escape the jail with the assistance of the laser blade and shows up at the registration region. He slides into a confined room, where he pays a lot of cash in return for a certain pack. Tragically, the officials notice him on camera, penetrating the confined region. By this time, Elizabeth and the youngsters have as of now strolled in through the gateway. In any case, when Jim attempts to follow them, an official stops him. Since the time gateway is irreversible, anybody who comes to Land Nova can't bring back. Jim knows about this, so he elbows the official, takes his firearm, what's more, runs into the entry to follow his loved ones. When he enters the gateway, he comes to the ancient Earth, which is totally unique from the world they recently left. Jim at last reunites with his family, yet when a warrior sees the weapon in his grasp, he is held at gunpoint. The fighter then checks the dubious pack that Jim is conveying, and shockingly, little Zoe emerges from it. Seeing the whole family together, the officers leave them be. Afterward, as the gathering continues towards Land Nova, little Zoe remarks on the sky. She takes note of that she had never seen the mist so white, and the trees so green. Subsequent to entering Land Nova for the first time, the explorers of the 10th journey are welcomed by Administrator Nathaniel Taylor, quite possibly the earliest individual to enter the movement entryway. He gives a short presentation of the spot, and guarantees that everybody is going to have a superior life from today onwards. Following this, he goes up against Jim and Elizabeth, furthermore, criticizes them for violating the law. Nonetheless, at the point when the couple argues for a new beginning, he lets them keep their 3 youngsters. Jim needs to remain a cop in Land Nova also, however given his set of experiences, Taylor allots him to the rural division. Then, the family sinks into their new home. Maddie and Zoe battle for their new rooms, while their folks ponder assuming they made the ideal choice by coming to Land Nova. As everybody is occupied with moving their effects, they understand that Zoe has strayed. Outside, an inquisitive Zoe approaches a brachiosaur, a dinosaur animal categories, and feeds it with some greenery. Shockingly, the monster herbivore acknowledges it, which makes the young lady extremely cheerful. The next day, Josh and Maddie head towards a direction meeting where they meet an individual occupant, Sky, and her companions Tasha, Max, and Tracker. After the presentations, Josh chooses to investigate Land Nova with Sky while Maddie likes to find out about their new home by going to the direction meeting. Not long after, Sky and her companions take Josh into the wilderness. They show up at a lovely cascade and bounce into it. Close to the cascade, Sky shows Josh a few rocks, where brilliant shaded images are cut into them. Since Taylor has prohibited anybody to visit this region, Sky makes Josh vow to stay quiet about the stones. Somewhere else, in the clinical area, Elizabeth takes care of a patient, encompassed by officials. She asks why the patient requires security, and one of the officials illuminates her that he is a Sixers part. Sixers give off an impression of being a gathering of renegades, who have isolated themselves from Land Nova. Their fundamental objective is to oust leader Taylor, also deny the principal settlement of every one of its assets. Abruptly, the patient leaps from his bed, what's more, takes steps to kill Elizabeth with a laser blade. In the wake of involving her as a prisoner and compelling the officials to incapacitate, the man escapes away. Outside, Jim sees the man acting dubious and follows him. Before sufficiently long, the man endeavors to assault Taylor, yet Jim effectively stops him. Jim realizes that there is in excess of a simple heaven in Land Nova, so he requests Taylor to make sense of about the man and why he was attempting to kill him. Nonetheless, with everybody around, the last option demands Jim get in his vehicle for a ride. After the two arrive at a similar cascade from previously, Taylor begins making sense of about the Sixers. He uncovers that the Sixers came from the sixth journey with a mystery supply of weapons. In any case, he as well doesn't have the foggiest idea why the gathering needs to oust him. Taylor then, at that point, compliments Jim on his dauntlessness, and offers him to join Land Nova's security powers. As the two keep talking, they notice a gathering of Sixers making a beeline for their province. Burning through no time, they start seeking after the Sixers, yet understand that they are in fact escaping from two carnivorous and animal categories of flesh-eating dinosaurs. Taylor and his bunch some way or another figure out how to repulse the dinosaurs, yet they actually need to manage their most outstanding foes. Mira, the head of the Sixers, emerges from her vehicle, alongside others, and starts talking. She uncovers that she is there to arrange the arrival of Carter, a similar person who attempted to kill Taylor prior. She then, at that point, delivers a huge box of fleeting iron, an incredibly uncommon component, what's more, proposes to exchange it for Carter. Understanding that the component is too significant to even think about abandoning, Taylor consents to the terms and deliveries Carter. Somewhere else, in the wilderness, Josh, Sky, and the different companions begin making alcohol from wild natural products. While they are having fun, they hear a boisterous thunder. Sky makes sense of it's an axoraptor, also called the slasher. It is a dinosaur animal categories with vivid quills, what's more, a whip-like bladed tail equipped for cutting a man into equal parts. Be that as it may, she guarantees Josh not to fear as slashers for the most part chase around evening time. Out of nowhere, they hear a considerably stronger cry, so they choose to get back to their vehicle. Nonetheless, they are before long spotted by several lethal slashers. The gathering some way or another figures out how to take shelter in a heavily clad vehicle deserted by the Sixers, yet at this point, a few slashers have encircled them. In the assault, Tasha, Max, and Tracker get genuinely harmed. Back in the settlement, Land Nova security finds film of the youngsters slipping ceaselessly. Dreading the most awful, Jim, Elizabeth, and a few fighters make a beeline for the woodland to protect the kids. Luckily, they track down the gathering in the last possible second and alarm away the dinosaurs utilizing some high-level apparatus. Following the narrow escape, they head back to Land Nova. Afterward, Sky visits Taylor in his home and apologizes for starting the outing. During their discussion, we understand that Sky is a vagrant whose father served under Taylor. Both of her folks were removed by fever a few years back. At some point, a gathering of Land Nova fighters goes out into the forest to get some supplies. Be that as it may, they are gone after furthermore, fiercely killed by a few inconspicuous animals. Meanwhile, Josh, Maddie, and Zoe go to an endurance workshop instructed by Lieutenant Alicia Washington, the second in order to Taylor. Maddie is a shrewd youngster and she enthusiastically replies the greater part of the inquiries posed to by the lieutenant. Soon thereafter, when Jim and Elizabeth start to get private, an animal begins shouting, so Jim goes outside to review. It is a similar inconspicuous creature that went after the fighters before, however Jim doesn't have a clue about this, so he just drives it off. The next day, Taylor and Jim plan to look for the missing men, thinking it was the Sixers that went after them. In the interim, Elizabeth is working in the clinical area when she knocks into Malcolm Wallace, one of her old buddies from school. Malcolm tells her that he is a science official there. All at once, Jim strolls in and intrudes on their discussion. Elizabeth rapidly acquaints the two with one another, yet when Malcolm discovers that Jim is her significant other, he is shocked. In the following scene, Jim, alongside Taylor the team head out to the forest. While driving, Taylor requests that Jim explore who is giving Mira data about Land Nova. He trusts that there's a mole inside the state. The gathering then, at that point, shows up at the homicide spot. When they see the dead troopers, that's what they notice: their appearances have been distorted. After a touch of checking around, they bring the dead bodies back to Land Nova, and the clinical group drove by Elizabeth and Malcolm begins analyzing them. Elizabeth finds that the troopers were gone after from a higher place. All of a sudden, Jim, who is likewise in the lab, sees a paw-like piece on one of the bodies. With this hint, the clinical officials choose to remain late to find out what animal might have killed the men. Notwithstanding, indeed, even late night of examination, they don't find any example that matches the puzzling paw. At the point when Elizabeth gets back, Jim asks her about Malcolm. After he presses the issue, she at last lets him know that she dated Malcolm for some time, prior to severing it herself. Soon thereafter, 2 or 3 endeavors closeness by and by, yet to their misfortune, they are once more hindered by a similar animal. This time Josh joins his dad outside, and they notice a few of similar animals there. Josh takes a stab at terrifying them away with a stone, yet just winds up making them irate. They swarm over the dad-child pair like a dangerous rash, yet before any serious injury is caused, Josh and Jim make it inside the house. The following day, Malcolm analyzes Jim's wounds from the animals and understands that they are the very ones that killed the men. Later treating the wounds, an inquisitive Jim asks Taylor about Malcolm and discovers that he was the person who mentioned Elizabeth's appearance on Land Nova. Outside, Sky and Josh are wandering around the market when they notice a huge group of something very similar birds. Be that as it may, before they could caution the others, the birds begin going after everybody. They leave the spot following a couple of moments, yet at this point, a few inhabitants are genuinely harmed. In the meantime, Malcolm recuperates one of the dead birds and infers that they are an unexplored world kind of pterosaur, a type of flying reptile. In a gathering with Taylor and his group, Malcolm finds that the pterosaurs might move. Taylor uncovers that a long time back, he and Lieutenant Alicia had found a huge number of egg shells while digging the ground on which Land Nova sits today. Be that as it may, since they were at that point brought forth, the officials thought the animals had long moved. Also, the shells made the ground so fruitful, that they chose to make the settlement in this area. Hearing this, Malcolm finishes up that the pterosaurs are going after them in light of the fact that Land Nova sits upon their favorable places. Since the clinical officials don't know a lot about the new species, Malcolm and Elizabeth let Taylor know that they will require a live male and female example of the pterosaurs to attempt to come up with an answer for protect against them. Then, Jim gets ready to go away from the settlement to get the examples while Malcolm subtleties him about the species. Nonetheless, rather than tuning in, Jim goes up against him for as yet being enamored with his spouse, as he was the person who mentioned her presence in Land Nova. This shocks Malcolm and he protects himself by saying that he called Elizabeth as she is the best clinical official he has at any point known. Some time later, Jim gets back with the two set examples. Subsequent to concentrating on the animals, Malcolm Elizabeth find that they can deliver a very strong pheromone that could be utilized to bait every one of the pterosaurs from the province to another place where they can raise. As additional pterosaurs keep on showing up at the settlement, Taylor arranges the security colleagues to be positioned all over the settlement. Mark Reynolds, a youthful warrior, who clearly has eyes for Maddie, comes to her home for security. Then again, Josh too brings Sky to keep her protected from the animals. Before long, a monster multitude of pterosaurs attacks the settlement and starts unleashing ruin. A couple of them force their direction into Jim's home by means of the air conduits. Mark, being an officer, attempts to drive them off yet just turns out to be taken out. Regardless of this, Josh and the gathering battle bravely and hold off the animals, sufficiently long to secure themselves in another room. Somewhere else at the clinical lab, Elizabeth and Malcolm at last wrap up setting up the pheromones. Presently, they should simply bait the pterosaurs away. The administrator, Taylor, chooses to chip in. Furthermore, Jim likewise goes along with him. Before long, the two stuff up furthermore, leave in a vehicle, what starts showering the pheromone. Shockingly, the arrangement works, and in spite of Taylor and Jim getting a few minor cuts, they figure out how to draw the whole multitude of pterosaurs from Land Nova. The episode closes as every one of the inhabitants emerge from their homes, and resume their ordinary resides once more.